The day I became public enemy number one in Lakeside Estates wasn't the day I committed some grand crime. It was the day I took my daughter fishing, and that was enough. Enough for a $500 fine, enough for public shaming, enough to make me realize this neighborhood had a queen, and I just stepped into her kingdom without bowing first. But here's what they didn't know: I had the time, the money, and the motivation to tear her little empire down. And I did. Until a few months ago, I had what people would label the perfect life: high rise office, 7-figure portfolio, a calendar so full of meetings I forgot what silence sounded like. Then cancer showed up, quiet, ruthless. It took my wife Rachel in less than a year and left me with a broken heart, a grieving daughter, and a silence I couldn't escape even if I wanted to. I walked away from the boardrooms, from the deals, sold my shares, closed the tabs, pulled Solon out of her private school, and started looking for peace instead of productivity. I found it on a listing called Lakeside Estates, a quiet, well kept neighborhood with a 6-acre lake. It looked like the kind of place where people waved at each other and grilled on weekends. I should have known better. The house was beautiful. The lake view? Even better. The real estate agent casually mentioned an HOA, but downplayed it. Just the usual stuff, she'd said. Trash bins, lawns, exterior colors. Oh, and the president, Karen Wellington? Very committed to property value. She'd said it with a forced smile. One of those, I legally can't say what I want to say expressions. I ignored it. After 15 years of managing egos in venture capital, I figured I could handle one overzealous neighborhood leader. Turns out I was wrong. It was a Saturday morning in April, the kind of morning that makes you forget your grief for a minute. Solon and I were out on the dock, fishing rods in hand, silence between us, but the good kind. She had just caught her second fish, a bluegill, and I saw it. That flicker of joy I hadn't seen since Rachel died. Then, "Excuse me, what do you think you're doing?" I turned and saw her, Karen Wellington, HOA president, dressed in $300 athleisure, holding a tablet like it was a weapon. The kind of person who looks like they report baristas for not smiling enough. She wasn't smiling either. Fishing is strictly prohibited. You are in violation of HOA Code 14.3. That'll be a $500 fine. Just like that. No hello. No welcome to the community. I stood up, calm but firm. There must be some mistake. We moved into the Sycamore house last month, and our realtor told us the lake allowed fishing. Karen tilted her head, like I was a toddler misunderstanding the rules of adult society. That regulation was amended 4 weeks ago. An email was sent to all residents. Ignorance of the law doesn't exempt you. She spun the tablet toward me. There it was, a neatly formatted PDF titled Recreational Update, Lakeside Estates, dated 3.5 weeks prior. I hadn't seen it. I checked spam, promotions, everything. Nothing. When I asked why fishing was banned, she barely tried to hide her contempt. Hooks can injure wildlife. Some residents have complained about the smell of bait near their patios and the visual disturbance. She glanced pointedly at our modest tackle box. My daughter and I catch and release, I said. We clean up after ourselves? Karen pursed her lips. This community expects a certain standard. I understand that new residents may struggle with that. Translation: you don't belong here. Solon was frozen next to me, clutching her fishing rod like it was the last piece of her mom she could hold on to. "We'll leave," I said, my jaw tight. Karen nodded, triumphant. "Do check your email more carefully in the future, Mr. Thorncroft. We wouldn't want more violations." That afternoon, Solon didn't speak much. Neither did I. But I was done playing neighborly. I started digging. First stop, my inbox. Still no email from the HOA. No record of anything being sent. Second stop, the HOA's website. Password protected, barely functional. Buried in the bylaws, I found something interesting. The lake wasn't actually HOA owned. It was leased from Meridian Development, the original developers. The lease? 30 years, and it expired in exactly 58 days. That was the first crack in Karen's foundation. The next morning, I met Merrick, older guy, walked past my house with a golden retriever named Scout, said he was a retired attorney, lived on the corner lot. When I mentioned Karen, he chuckled darkly. "Oh, you've met the tyrant?" He invited me over for coffee. That's when I realized I wasn't the first target. "Karen runs this place like it's her personal kingdom," he said, flipping through a binder of HOA violation notices. "She finds people into submission, and if they sell, her real estate company scoops up the house cheap. It's happened a dozen times." Then he dropped a bombshell. "She's trying to buy the lake." He wasn't kidding. I cross-checked the county's public filings. Meridian was losing money. Fast. Karen had entered private negotiations to purchase the lake. Not for the HOA, mind you, for herself. Her plan? Buy the lake. Change the rules. Build luxury properties along the shoreline. Increase her property value and profit off the entire community. The fishing ban wasn't about hooks or bait. It was about control. And that's when I stopped seeing Karen as a problem and started seeing her as an opportunity. Merrick introduced me to Samuel next. Black gentleman, early 60s, ran the local bank before retiring. He didn't just dislike Karen. He had receipts. He pulled up a spreadsheet that made my eyes widen. 10 years of HOA violation data, color-coded. Minority homeowners were cited 3 times more often. Newer residents? Twice as often. Samuel's voice was calm, but firm. "She enforces the rules to push out the people she doesn't like. Then her company buys up the house. And now she wanted the lake. I had money. I had time. I had nothing to lose. So I formed a plan. First, check Meridian's financials. Turns out, they were desperate, over-leveraged after a failed commercial project, drowning in debt. The lake? One of the few assets they could sell fast. Karen had made a lowball offer. $300,000 spread over 18 months, full of contingencies. I could beat that. So I did. $350,000, all cash, 7-day close. I wired it through a shell LLC to avoid raising suspicion. They accepted within 48 hours. I now owned the lake. Karen had no idea. But she did know I was organizing something. Violation notices began arriving daily. My mailbox was 1 inch too high. My garage door was painted the wrong shade. Solon's bike was left in the driveway. Another $100 fine. It didn't matter. Every petty move she made only fueled my fire and brought more neighbors to my side. Soon, we had a coalition, an encrypted chat group, anonymous meetings. We weren't rebels. We were residents reclaiming power. And then came the first real blow. The environmental inspection I ordered on the lake. It showed years of neglect, high phosphate levels, algae blooms, signs of ecological stress. Karen had used environmental concerns as an excuse to ban fishing. while actually letting the lake rot. That gave me a legal window. A clause in the HOA's recreational use agreement allowed the leaseholder to terminate access early if the HOA failed to maintain water quality. I was the leaseholder now. And Karen? She was done. I didn't announce it right away. Owning the lake was power, and power works best when it's invisible. Instead, I waited, quietly, watching Karen build her little fantasy. She started planning her big reveal, called an emergency HOA meeting to present phase 1 of her so-called lake revitalization project. What she didn't know was that I had already filed the paperwork to terminate the HOA's recreational lease, citing environmental mismanagement. The deadline was ticking, 28 days, and she was walking straight into the trap. Karen's presentation was a masterclass in manipulation, PowerPoint slides, phrases like elevated lifestyle, premium amenity enhancement, exclusive lakeside experience. Translation? Fewer people, more profit. She showed architectural renderings of a new members-only lounge, right where the public dock used to be. A place with wine bars, cabanas, private decks, and no space for fishing poles or kids. This will increase property values by 12%, she said, flashing a grin that didn't reach her eyes. The board clapped like trained seals. Then came the kicker, a proposed special assessment, $50 per household, per month, indefinitely, supposedly to prepare for future improvements. But we all knew the truth. It was her war chest, her way of raising capital to buy the lake. I sat in the back of that meeting, watching her lie through her teeth. When she mentioned outsiders who don't understand our community values, her eyes locked on me. My knuckles went white. Not yet, I told myself. Let her climb higher before we cut the rope. After the meeting, Samuel approached her, calmly, respectfully, and questioned the necessity of the assessment. Karen's response, "Well, Mr. Washington, perhaps you should focus on your own finances. Didn't you have IRS troubles a few years back?" It was a low blow, the kind meant to humiliate, not inform. Yes, Samuel had faced an audit years ago, a clerical error, long resolved. But now she was weaponizing it in front of the community. The mask had slipped. The queen was cracking. And then things escalated. Suddenly, I started getting visits from city inspectors. Random inspections, they said. Concerns about your deck's stability, they said. Interesting how all these inspections came right after Karen had dinner with the mayor, James Wilson, longtime family friend, and, apparently, a helpful puppet. But I wasn't playing defense anymore. Behind the scenes, I met with Tom Branson, the Meridian exec overseeing the lake sale. He confirmed it. Karen's offer was crumbling. Her investors were getting cold feet. She was trying to renegotiate, but the ink on my deal was already dry. All that was left was the reveal. Just when I thought Karen couldn't go lower, she found a way. Solon came home from school crying. Brianna said her mom told the class we're trying to ruin the neighborhood, that we're troublemakers. Brianna's mom? HOA board member, Karen's right hand. That was it. They had brought my daughter into this. I picked up the phone and called Merrick. "I'm not leaving," I said. "They want a war? Let's go." 2 days later, I got the green light. The environmental inspection was complete. The board had approved my termination of the HOA's access. The lake, and the 10-foot perimeter around it, was now private property, mine. Karen still had no idea. She was busy planning a party, a full-blown lakeside gala, for original homeowners only, catered food, live band, wine bars at both ends, no kids, no renters, no newcomers. It was designed to send a message. This is our lake, not yours. The flyers went out. That was my cue. I called Merrick, Samuel, and my attorney. We met the night before the party. Tomorrow, I said. We cut the head off the snake. The event was exactly what I expected. 60 residents, designer dresses, cheese platters, Karen in a flowing white dress like she was hosting a wedding. She picked up the microphone. I want to thank all of you for supporting our vision for Lakeside Estates. Together, we're preserving the prestige of our community. That's when I stepped onto the platform. Karen's smile froze. You weren't invited, she hissed, moving toward me. I think I was, I replied. I nodded to my attorney, who handed me a folder, then to Officer Reynolds, a local cop I'd hired for security. I raised the mic. Good afternoon, everyone. I won't take much of your time. A hush fell over the crowd. I'm here today as the legal owner of this lake and all surrounding property within 10 feet of the shoreline. Gasps, confused whispers. Karen's face turned pale. Effective immediately, this is private property. You are all currently trespassing. Karen lunged forward. You can't do this! The HOA... I cut her off. The HOA never owned this lake. Meridian did, and as of last week they sold it. To me. I held up the deed. And due to environmental violations, the recreational lease has been terminated. Early, Officer Reynolds stepped forward. You have 15 minutes to vacate the premises. Karen's mouth opened, then shut. Silence. One by one, people began packing up. No music, no laughter, just the sound of folding chairs and bruised egos. One older man leaned in as he walked past me. About damn time someone stood up to her. That week, I installed private property signs, hired security, cleaned up the shoreline, and then I made an announcement. I would be restoring the lake, ecological rehabilitation, educational programs, fishing access for kids. Just one caveat. Board members of the current HOA were banned until further notice. Karen lost it. She called an emergency meeting, tried to rally the board, threatened a lawsuit for community asset seizure. But she had no leg to stand on. The lake was never theirs. Then she tried something even more desperate. She started a whisper campaign. The lake is polluted, dangerous for children, unstable shoreline. I posted the lab results. Crystal clear water, phosphate levels dropping, native fish returning. Strike two. Then she went nuclear. Late one night, my security cameras caught 3 people near the dock. Karen, 2 board members. They poured something into the water. The next morning, the algae blooms spiked in one specific corner. I called the police, handed them the footage. Karen was charged with criminal trespassing and attempted environmental contamination. The video hit the local news. Her face, her name. It was over. What came next was a domino effect. Residents started speaking out. Sapphira, a flower shop owner and board member, stood up at a meeting. For years, I've watched Karen manipulate the board for personal gain. It stops now. The floodgates opened. People brought receipts, emails, fines, video clips, petty revenge stories. A motion passed to audit all HOA finances for the last 5 years. That audit revealed everything. Karen had used HOA funds to host private events, overpaid her own real estate company, cited homes she later bought for below market value, fraud, manipulation, corruption, and now, evidence. She resigned a week later. No press conference, no apology. Just a for sale sign in her yard and an empty seat at the HOA table. Her empire was done, but I wasn't finished. The lake still needed protection. The community still needed healing. So I held a meeting. Invited everyone, except the current HOA board. That night, in my backyard, I stood in front of nearly every family in Lakeside Estates, and I made a promise. I'm transferring the lake to a community trust, with conditions. 1. HOA leadership must be completely restructured. 2. All rules reviewed and fairly applied. 3. An independent ethics board will oversee all decisions. People stood, clapped, some cried, and then I made my final move. Over the last month, I said, I've quietly purchased the mortgage notes for nearly 20% of the properties in this neighborhood, including Karen's. There was a collective gasp. I'm not here to threaten anyone. In fact, I'm offering to refinance every loan below market rates. But first, we clean house. The vote passed. The board dissolved. Karen's influence evaporated. Safira was elected president. Transparency became policy. Fines dropped. Tension melted. The lake was renamed Rachel's Lake in honor of my wife. 3 months later, we hosted a community fishing day. No barriers, no permits, just families, kids, laughter. Solon caught a catfish the size of her arm. Her eyes sparkled. Mom would be proud of you, she said softly. I looked out over the water, the sun bouncing off its calm surface. No, I said. She'd be proud of us both. Life in Lakeside Estates changed quickly after the fall. For the first time since we moved in, people started making eye contact. They waved, they smiled. They invited us to cookouts, game nights, Sunday walks. It was like someone had opened the windows and let real air into the neighborhood. The new HOA board, led by Safira and supported by Samuel and Merrick, held open meetings, live streamed them, took anonymous suggestions, but beneath the good vibes was still the fallout. Karen Wellington wasn't going down without swinging. First came the smear campaign, blog posts under fake names, anonymous flyers in mailboxes, comments on local forums claiming I had hijacked the community. She tried to brand me as a manipulator, a tyrant in disguise. She even accused me of purchasing the lake as a power play to destroy traditional family values. You'd think she was running for office and losing. Then she started sending letters, legal threats, claims of unlawful exclusion from communal resources, cease and desists. My attorney, a stone-faced woman named Delia, who'd gone toe-to-toe with Fortune 500 CEOs, laughed out loud. She's throwing darts at a wall hoping one sticks, Delia said. None of this will hold up in court. And she was right. But then things got darker. One night, Solon's school folder was missing from the porch. Next day, my tires were slashed. No witnesses, no fingerprints. Police took reports, did nothing. I installed a 12-camera security system with real-time cloud backups. And then, of course, Karen's concerned citizen group accused me of surveillance violations. It was laughable, if it weren't so pathetic. But while Karen was unraveling, something interesting was happening in the community. People were waking up, not just to the HOA corruption, but to how little they'd been paying attention for years. One neighbor, a quiet woman named Priya, told me she'd lived here for 6 years and never once opened an HOA email. I just assumed they had our best interest in mind, she said. Now she was attending every meeting, taking notes, asking real questions. Others followed. One by one, the silence was replaced with accountability. Sapphira did something brilliant. She made all past HOA meeting minutes public. Every word, every vote, every questionable expense. And the picture that emerged? Ugly. There were payments to consultants that turned out to be Karen's college roommate. A $14,000 landscaping job on a green space used by 5 homes, all owned by Karen's closest friends. A community beautification budget that somehow funded wine deliveries and patio heaters for just one cul-de-sac. People were furious. The more light we shined, the more rot we found. Meanwhile, I focused on Rachel's Lake. We hired an ecological restoration team, replanted native vegetation, built natural filtration beds, installed solar-powered aerators to fight algae bloom, and something amazing happened. Wildlife came back. Herons, frogs, turtles. The water cleared. Fish populations stabilized. We partnered with a local school to host field trips. I started a Saturday fishing club for kids. Solon helped organize the events, proud and beaming. And every week, we got bigger. By midsummer, we had 40 kids and their parents showing up. People brought coolers, snacks, extra rods for newcomers. The same dock where Karen had fined me now had a hand-painted sign. Rachel's dock, catch, release, remember. And then came the twist. Karen, drowning in debt from her legal fees and abandoned property deals, put her house on the market. But no one wanted it. The reputation? Toxic. Her name? Infamous. Worse, I had quietly purchased the note on her mortgage months prior. It was legal, strategic, and poetic. When she missed 2 payments in a row, my phone rang. Mr. Thorncroft, her broker said stiffly. Ms. Wellington is requesting an audience. An audience? I almost laughed. We met at a neutral location, a dull little office space in town. Karen looked older, tired, not just physically, emotionally drained. Her voice was brittle. I want to negotiate terms. I said nothing. I understand that you hold the mortgage. I'd like to avoid foreclosure. Still, I waited. She swallowed. I'll resign from all remaining boards. I'll issue a public apology. Just let me sell the house on my terms. I leaned forward. You want dignity on the way out. She nodded once. You never gave that to anyone you crushed, I said. But I'm not you. She blinked. You'll let me walk? I stood up. You already did. You just didn't notice when it started. I waived the penalties, gave her 60 days to sell, walked out. She never contacted me again. After her departure, everything changed. The remaining board members resigned or were voted out. We set term limits, independent financial auditors, public voting platforms. We turned Lakeside Estates into a model of transparency, and something even bigger started to grow. One night, after a community event, I sat with Merrick, Samuel, and Sapphira on my porch. You know, Samuel said, we should publish this. What, like a book? I joked. Why not? Merrick said. A guide, a warning, a blueprint. That's when the idea hit. We launched a website, HOAreform.org, uploaded every document, every policy, every financial record, added templates for bylaw reform, community trust creation, and resident advocacy. It exploded. Emails poured in. People from all over the country, even Canada, asking how to replicate what we did. A reporter called, then 2, then a podcast. Soon, Rachel's Lake became more than a sanctuary. It became a symbol. And through it all, the noise, the attention, the rebuild, Solon stayed close. She started journaling, then blogging, then writing a short story about a girl who saves her town from a corrupt queen. I read it one night, teary eyed. "You're a better writer than me," I said. She beamed. I had a good story to work with. By the end of the year, Lakeside Estates had flipped its identity. No longer that uptight neighborhood with the psycho HOA. Now it was the place where they stood up. People moved in because of what we'd built. And, for the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt since before Rachel got sick: peace. And still, every Saturday morning, Solon and I went fishing. Same dock, same rods, same quiet. One morning, she reeled in a fish, looked at it, then at me. Think Mom would have liked it here? I smiled, watching the sun reflect off the lake's still surface. She would have loved it. A year after the $500 fishing fine, I stood on the stage at the Lakeside Community Hall. Not as a rebel, not as the guy who took down the HOA, but as a neighbor. The room was full, every chair taken. Families I'd never spoken to a year ago now nodding, smiling, waiting. We weren't here to fight anymore. We were here to vote on the charter for the newly established Lakeside Trust, the legal entity that would own Rachel's Lake indefinitely for the benefit of all residents. No board president would ever be able to privatize it again. No HOA vote could strip away access. No single person could decide who gets to enjoy the water. It would belong to everyone, and it would stay that way forever. As the vote passed, unanimous, I looked down at Solon in the front row. She was smiling, not politely, not cautiously, fully. She wasn't the grieving girl who clung to fishing rods to feel close to her mother anymore. She was becoming something stronger, someone who'd seen what silence does and how truth sounds when it's finally spoken. After the vote, a woman I didn't recognize approached me. She introduced herself as Valerie. "My family just moved here," she said. "We read about the story, the lake, your daughter. We'd been looking for a place to start over." She paused, her voice softening. "I lost my husband last spring. Cancer. Just like your wife." Her daughter, maybe 6, stood beside her, clutching a small pink tackle box. I didn't have to say anything. I just nodded and put a hand on her shoulder. "Welcome home." But behind the scenes, something else was forming. A new kind of tension. Not angry, not toxic, but political. When people get a taste of self-governance, they want more. More input, more say, more power. And with the HOA's stranglehold gone, the community was evolving rapidly. People started proposing new ideas: a community garden, solar streetlights, bike lanes, more inclusive holiday events. Some argued, others collaborated. There were disagreements, of course, but now they were handled in the open, in forums, town halls, surveys, with empathy, with evidence. We didn't silence each other. We listened. That might sound boring, but after a year of war, it was beautiful. Meanwhile, horrorform.org went viral. Hundreds of neighborhoods submitted their own Karen horror stories. Board abuse, racist enforcement, financial fraud, even surveillance. It became a movement. I started getting calls from journalists, academics, even a few city planners. "Can we fly you out for a talk? Would you consult on our case? Will you run for office?" I turned them all down. I wasn't interested in becoming another politician. I'd had enough power to last a lifetime. All I wanted was to fish on Saturdays. Still, I couldn't ignore the reach. So I did the only thing that made sense. I published it all. A digital handbook, the HOA playbook, how to take back your neighborhood. Free download, no ads, no paywall, just tactics, templates, laws, stories. By the end of the year, over 300,000 downloads. We even launched a podcast. Solon came up with the name Catch and Release Stories from the Front Lines of Suburbia. It hit number 8 on Apple's social issues chart in the first month. Apparently, people were ready to talk, and as the story spread, Karen's legend took on a life of its own. Not in the way she'd hoped. Someone on Reddit made a meme, side by side images. One of Karen holding a wine glass at the HOA party, the other of her being escorted off my dock. Caption: When you rule the lake versus when the lake rules you. It went viral. Then came the TikToks, dramatic readings, skits, animated retellings. One teenager built an entire parody series, Karen, Queen of Covenants, complete with a cardboard crown and HOA violations taped to her robe. Even I had to admit, it was hilarious and maybe cathartic. But the impact wasn't just digital. Real policy started changing. 3 other neighborhoods in our county amended their HOA charters. One dissolved theirs completely and transitioned to a co-op structure based on our trust model. City Hall took notice. The new mayor, not Karen's cousin-in-law, asked if I'd be willing to speak at a housing reform summit. I agreed. I stood on a panel next to architects, attorneys, city planners, and I told them what I'd learned. That power in neighborhoods isn't about money. It's about who shows up, who reads the fine print, who refuses to shut up when someone says, "That's just how it is." Not all reactions were positive. There were trolls, critics, cynics. You only got away with this because you're rich. You're just another guy who bought his way into control. You think everyone has time to run a resistance? And you know what? They weren't wrong. I did have money. I did have time. I was in a position most people aren't. But that's exactly why I had to do it. Because if I didn't, who would? And in the end, none of it was about the lake. Not really. It was about watching someone crush people quietly, systematically, with bureaucracy. It was about a widow who just wanted her daughter to have something good to remember. It was about rules used like weapons and the slow erosion of what community is supposed to mean. It was about saying, enough. Last week, I took Solon to a different lake, just for the day. She sat next to me in the boat, hair in a loose braid, notebook in her lap. "You still remember that morning?" I asked her. "The day we got the fine?" She nodded. "It was the first time I saw you mad." I laughed. "Not the last, though." She grinned. "Definitely not." Then she grew quiet. "But it was also the first day I saw you fight. Not like yelling fight. Like fix things fight." That hit me harder than I expected, because she was right. That day didn't just change the neighborhood. It changed me. So, if you're watching this from a place where you feel stuck, where your voice doesn't matter, where the rules feel rigged, where someone like Karen runs the show, I want you to hear this. You don't have to burn it all down. You just have to learn the system better than they do. And when the moment comes, you pull the thread. One rule, one fine, one unjust moment. That's all it takes. You don't need to scream. You just need to pull. And when it all unravels, let the sunlight in, because sometimes justice doesn't show up in a courtroom. Sometimes it looks like a little girl catching her first fish, in peace,